All right. This is Mariano Agmi with the final bell, and I'm happy to be joined by Charles Boston Strong Rosa. Charles, how's it going?
Great, man. Just finished a hard training session over at American Combat Gym. I'm in Boca Raton right now for training in South Florida. So, enjoying in the sunshine in the back and, still putting in the hard work. And, I can't wait to come up next week for fight week and, get to work.
Well, lucky you, man, because it's pretty cold up in New York and the New England area. So, so you'll be feeling some of that. So tell me, how's training going for this fight? How long have you been training for this fight?
Yeah, I've been training for a while. My last fight was in late December. I fought in Orlando. I got a first round finish, knockout. So I'm coming off of, a first round knockout win. And I was happy about that, get that in. I was supposed to fight for the last CES event, but I think it was trouble finding the right opponent and the time kind of got a crunch. But in the meantime, I was able to go to Bali, Indonesia and train at Soma Fight Club, which is, one of the most famous gyms in Bali. And get some awesome work with some like kickboxers and some high level, glory fighters and stuff like that. So it was like kind of a, vacation slash training, but I mean, I was training 2 times a day, but it was just in Bali. So it's kind of like vacation too. It was beautiful. And then, I've been back here steady grinding, putting in a lot of work.
Absolutely. And you're fighting Josh Hook on Harvey. He has a record of 8-2-1. But his last fight has been a while ago. What do you know about Josh?
I don't know much about him at all. I actually just, I hit up Pat yesterday. I'm like, man, is this guy hasn't even announced a fight yet? Like what's going on? I was a little confused, but he's like, no, we talk to him every
Yeah.
day. He's in. I mean, he showed up to, 11 pro fights in his career so far. So, I think he'll be there. I mean, he has a great record, 8 wins, only 2 losses,
Yep.
and both of his losses are to, world-class guys. They're not like he lost to anybody that wasn't formidable. And so I mean, he's fought some tough guys. He's beaten some tough guys, and I think he's a formidable opponent. And I'm excited to get it on with them. May 3rd.
Yeah. And he's from Maine and he's fought exclusively, it seems like, for New England fights for that promotion. I was wondering, like, have you ever heard of him coming up while you were in New England or no?
Yeah, I mean, New England fights. We went up there 1 or 2 times to on the main shows, and they have a great show up there, and they do a good job. And I think that's their star. You know what I'm saying? So they're putting their star against
Yeah.
CES's star, and
Against
and
ours.
see what
Yeah,
I'm undefeated
absolutely.
at the CES Hall of Fame already, and I'm undefeated with them, and looking to continue my unbeaten streak in New England, continue my unbeaten streak for CES, and win my first world championship.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wanted to ask. I just wanted to confirm this is the first time you fight for a world title. Is that right?
Yeah, for a professional one, I have many
Yeah,
amateur belts. I was the
amateur,
number
right?
ranked amateur fighter in the world when I was coming up in the amateurs. I had 20 wins as an amateur, built my way up. I stayed amateur for a long time. It's kind of like a lot of boxers do that, but I was like one of the first MMA fighters to take that many fights and really build my career. So when I got to the UFC, I was ready, and that's what I did. I went 9-0 with my first, with all first row finishes to get into the UFC. And I think definitely have built myself up and good, and have had an amazing career up to this point, man. And but I've still haven't got the chance to fight for the world title. I mean, I had a close fight, over former UFC champion Yair Rodriguez. I lost a split decision to him in Mexico City, which is his hometown, the guy that I thought I beat. But it's in Mexico. Judges aren't going to always go your way. If it was anywhere else, I feel like I would have won that fight. But man, I've had a great journey, a lot of great fights. 5 performance bonuses in the UFC, fought in the best of the best, and
Yeah,
always been in there with all of them. I've never been counted out. I've never been finished my whole career against any of the top guys on the planet. And I'm excited to bounce back and finally get a world title. But the cool thing is this is also my first 5-round 5-minute fight. Like I said, I fought as an amateur. I fought a 5-round 3-minute fight when I was an amateur, and I finished the guy in the 5th round with a triangle. And that was a high pace, exhausting fight. Like I think I almost got my teeth knocked out in that fight. It was a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago, but this is my first time fighting 5 rounds, 5 minutes. And I'm really excited for it because I feel like that's one of my biggest strengths is my cardio.
absolutely, absolutely. I've seen that in your fights. And have you gotten a chance to see video on Josh Harvey, like to figure out sort of how your styles might mesh?
Yeah, I mean, I know he wrestled in Maine, so I got a lot of respect. I mean, wrestlers are always hard-nosed, tough guys. Wrestlers definitely, are it's probably one of the toughest things you could have becoming, being a fighter is having a wrestling background. So, I definitely have respect for him there. I know he's going to be tough. He's went in there, like I said, he's fought in some of the best guys. I think as far as like
Yep.
announcements and him fighting and watching training videos, I mean, his name's Hookem Harvey, so I'm sure he got a good hook and he got some power if he's a wrestler. But I saw him also, and I expect him to have good wrestling. So, I think it'll be a little dangerous for him to try to take me down because he knows my level of jiu-jitsu. I haven't seen much of his jiu-jitsu level, but if he wants to stand and bang, we can do that too. I think, like I said, I've been in there with the best of them, but as far as me seeing video, the only thing I've seen on his social media recently was him training with the Korean Zombie. I don't know if he was in North Korea or if he
Right.
came. I wasn't very clear, but I think he's putting work in with legitimate guys, and I think he's a legitimate fighter, and that's why I took the fight against him. I mean, I didn't just want to fight against anybody. I want to be fighting the best guys, and I want to be fighting the best guys. And I've fought in all the best guys my whole career. I've shown that I'm the best fighter from New England, and I'm gonna become the world champion and secure that on Friday, May 3rd.
Absolutely. And looking at his amateur career, he does have one, but it's not as extensive as yours. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Also having a brother that's coming up, right, in the ranks when it comes to the amateur scene and pretty much ready to go pro. What do you advise your fighters, the fighters you train with, as far as level of, so how extensive an amateur career should be? Because you're right, in boxing, that's kind of a customary thing, right? You have a long amateur career from when you're pretty young, then you go pro, and you can overdo it. I think some of the Eastern Europeans maybe overdo it where they have like 300, 400 fights. And then by the time they go pro, they're maybe a little bit past it. But the Americans, I think, have a more balanced approach. What do you think when it comes to MMA and how it translates?
Well, that's the thing is MMA is such a new sport, and people don't really realize that. I mean, I think the UFC first came around, and it's not that old of a sport. It's brand new. So nobody actually knows. There's no formula. There's no blueprint. Nobody knows like it. People are just kind of guessing,
Right.
trying to figure out this formula, trying to figure out this recipe to make a perfect fighter. And it's still not perfected yet. I mean, it's very close. I mean, this is the first time ever that we've had guys, kids training jujitsu when they're 3 or 4 years old, starting from the beginning. Like that didn't exist. Like when my coach, just for example, like the timeline, my coach, Charles McCarthy, he's about, 10 years older than me. He was a jiu-jitsu guy. I mean, obviously he could strike a little bit, but he was usually fighting against a taekwondo guy. It was like UFC had like, I'm a
Right.
wrestler, I'm a boxer. Then the next generation, started to come along where they started mixing it together. Well, that was actually the first generation, like the Hoist Gracies versus,
Yep.
those guys. The next generation was my coach, where he was an expert at jiu-jitsu, but he definitely still trained striking and still was doing wrestling and started to mix it up. But they weren't great at everything. The generation that I'm at now, finally, is everybody's good at everything. You're not taking a fight with somebody that doesn't, isn't at least a blue belt in almost every martial art. That's a good pro fighter. I mean, there's definitely guys that aren't, but if you're like legitimate good fighter, like you know how to wrestle, you know how to strike, jujitsu, submission defense, offense, a little bit of judo, like you got a little bit of strength and conditioning, like it's a whole
Yeah.
package. So when you asked like how long, the question was though, you asked how long do you think these guys should take? I think by the time that you take your first, I think by the time the best part about the amateur career is that you get all this experience, and experience is the biggest thing I think in fighting is being able to, know not to, burn yourself out going for a submission, know what it's like, to get rocked in a fight, how to recover from it, know what it's like, when to spend your energy, when not to, know what it's like when you feel so tired in the middle of, on the stool that you want to quit, but how do you get up and regain yourself? Like there's so many factors that come into play, even, winning a championship, man. You know how to put the belt on your damn shoulder. There's so many things that I think that need to get run over. And sometimes these guys are getting the UFC and it's their first time going through these situations. And they're supposed to be the best person on the planet and they're just doing something for the first time. That doesn't really make sense. So I think the more experience anybody can have and the more fights, the better they're going to be. And then when they get to that level, then they're going to finally be able to shine because they've experienced it before. Like that's what practice is. Like the more times you do something better,
Yeah.
you get at it. And that's anything in life. So why would they do that for MMA? Like I feel like by the time you make your first professional fight, you should be good enough to fight in the UFC. And by the time you make it to the UFC, you need to be good enough to be champion because it happens fast, Like you could like from the time I made my first pro fight to my first UFC fight was 18 months. I went 9-0 in 18 months from my first pro fight to fighting my first UFC fight against Dennis Seaver on the number 8 guy in the world on 5 days notice. Like, so you got to be ready.
It's pretty impressive. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Very different from boxing, by the way, when it comes to that. At least it is changing. It is changing. People are starting to fight for world titles with a lot less fights. But back in the day, you'd have 20, 24 fights before you even challenge.
Yeah.
And sometimes people go 10 years before they got a title shot.
Yeah.
Last time we spoke, you were doing some work with the armed forces. And so I was curious, I know you're a busy guy. You do some commentating. That's the last time I saw you where you were commentating. You do a lot of different things. What have you been up to since the last time we spoke, which was, I guess, back in October?
Yeah. So one of my friends that I worked for Titan FC and I commentated for years, Titan FC. It was on Fight Pass, a good show. He was a former Marine. Lex McMahon was a Marine, also great guy. He manages tons of UFC fighters. He was my manager for many years, still really good friends with him. I still teach his kids jujitsu and stuff like that. And he's just been an awesome mentor and a friend to me for years. And he, like I said, being a former Marine, they have this thing called Armed Forces Entertainment where where they set us up, they pay us to go to all these different military bases and train the Marines, the armed forces, the Navy, the Air Force. Like it was probably one of the most amazing experiences I've ever been part of in my life. Like, basically we were there to boost the morale of the troops because sometimes like when they're over in Kosovo, Macedonia, and all these different countries, Bulgaria, Romania, Spain, sometimes they kind of miss America, they miss home, and they're kind of away from their family. So anything that we can do to go there and brighten their day in the future, put a smile on their face, getting something to be excited about, because there's also a very high, suicide rate for a lot of troops. And that's a big issue too, that I think Lex really helps these guys that are mentally ill, mentally having difficult times, they're depressed. And some of them, they want to kill themselves. And the suicide rate is like one of the highest, for Marines and stuff like that. So you never know, going there and sharing your story and giving some advice, or maybe even just giving someone a handshake, or teaching someone how to throw a jab or something could change their life, and it could even save it for some of the guys. And there wasn't, I think, one person that we went and met at those places that didn't seem like their morale was boosted a little bit, and we helped them out. So I feel like we did our job, and on top of it, I feel like I had an amazing time, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I was driving tanks, helicopters, shooting 50 cows off of boats in Cuba. Like it was probably one of the coolest experiences I've ever been part of in my life. So I'm super for that, and I was happy to be, part of the American troops and boosting their morale.
Absolutely. And I guess it takes you to pretty far and distinct places. Like where are some of the countries you've been to since you've been doing this work?
With the Armed Forces Entertainment?
Yeah.
We went to Bulgaria, Romania, Kosovo, Macedonia.
Mm-hmm.
The best one was Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, which was cool. That's it was amazing. Man, like there's so many places I can't even remember where we went, but we went like every day. We woke up in a new country. Like, where are we? It's like we're in Bulgaria.
Pretty amazing.
And like we were with a couple other fighters like Jose Shorty Torres, Eric Anders, who's in the UFC. Jessica Penne, who, she's an awesome friend of mine too, and all hail Haley McCown, who's probably one of the, up and coming, girl fighters in the world. Keep an eye out for her. She's really been crushing it, and she has a big fight coming up. So yeah, awesome group of people that they bring us together. And, like I said, we go teach these seminars and teach the troops. So
been all over the place. And do you do it in one shot, like where you're going to one country to the other, or is it like you go to one country, come back?
Yeah. One day's a travel day and one day's a seminar. One day's a travel day, one day's a seminar. We try to fit in fun activity. Oh, wow. One day we had like a 10-hour layover in Germany, and like this hadn't, we're like, yo, let's go. They're like, let's go to Oktoberfest. I was like, oh man, I don't drink. Like, all right, it was still awesome. Right. one of the coolest things I ever seen. Like it's just, so we just were like, oh, we got 10 hours. Let's take an Uber to Oktoberfest. Stayed there for 5 hours, got back on the plane, and just like it was just like, and then in Spain we got to go zip lining over some waterfalls, and
Oh, nice.
it was so we got to do some fun stuff too. It wasn't all like, training, but it was really special thing to be part of, and I'm super grateful for it. I think things happen for a reason, and even some of those troops still reach out to me, and I still talk to them, and I'm still friends with some of the people that I met on the trip, like Jessica Penne, Halen McCown, and Eric Anders has been my boy, and Shorty Torres for a while, but they were on the trip and they just made it more fun, Lex and all them, and we just keep it up.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe you don't indulge in the drinks, but what about food? When you're not training, do you indulge a little bit in the food and like checking out like the
Oh
culture
no,
and the
sure.
food?
That's other one of my huge passions is culinary arts. I mean, I graduated from Johnson and Wales in Providence, Rhode
I know,
Island.
I know. Yeah,
So that's my other passion is food, and I love going to other countries, like learn about food. And it's funny because it's called technically like my degree is in culinary arts and martial arts, as they're both arts. And I don't think of myself as an artist at all. Like I couldn't draw, I couldn't do a painting when my life depended on it that was good. But I was never a good drawer or writer or nothing. But that's I'm a martial artist and a culinary artist, and the cool thing about that is that it's endless. Like you go to all these different
yeah,
countries and you look about their food and their culture, and it all ties in. And then everybody likes martial arts too. So the coolest thing is like going to teach a seminar with like in Peru. I went and taught a seminar, and then like after they come and take me to the best ceviche spot in Peru, and then we go see. It's just like
amazing.
kind of
Yeah,
brings you in, so you get the undercover spots that usually you wouldn't be able to go to. You know what I'm saying? So it's really special experiences I've been able to that martial arts has given me the opportunity to do.
yeah, for sure, man, for sure. The other thing I saw since the last time we spoke is you challenged Bradley Martyn to a fight, and I was curious. Did he ever respond to you?
Nah, he doesn't want the smoke, dude. He already knows. Like he's been just the thing is I just don't like when people disrespect martial arts because I'm very respectful. I don't like I'm not passionate unless I hear somebody say something and like go and disrespect the sport, of saying, oh, like I could, they're just like all the years and hours of hard work when it's not true. You're making false statements. It's like a new thing all these influencers are doing. They're just talking trash to get views and stuff on their thing. But like, then people get a distorted view of what's real and what's not. And, we've already proven in UFC 1 that Royce Gracie went against the biggest guys, like went against sumo wrestlers and they're beating them like this guy's like, oh yeah, I could beat up all these scrawny fight. You know what I mean? It's just like it's kind of just it's difficult to listen to. But I just I mean, if he wanted to do it, I know there was a couple opportunities that he wanted to put some money up, and I didn't have a fight scheduled at the time. So I had some people that were like, yo, if you do this and call him out and make this video, we'll give you money for making the video, and then we'll stream it on our services. So you'll get a big cut of it. You'll
Yeah,
get pay-per-view points. And I was like, all right, this is perfect for me. Works good, works good. Like I'll make this video, give me some money. We'll put the video out. If he accepts it, now at least everything is set up. You guys have the whole promotion set up. We take the fight and make some money. But I think he didn't really want to do that. He just went back to and lifted some weights.
yeah, and looking at some of his I didn't watch too many of his videos, but I had seen him in the past, talking to Devin Haney about fighting him on the street, and Devin Haney fights tomorrow night in boxing, and he's an accomplished world champion. I agree with you. It's like I know they do it for cap, but just seeing this, it's really disrespectful to a person who's dedicating their whole lives to this, especially when you don't mean it, right? Like he probably doesn't mean it. He's just a bodybuilder that's trying to get attention.
It's serious
Yeah,
enough, but like I just don't like
yeah,
a lot of the fake stuff anymore. It just seems like it distorts a lot of younger generation older, just like you don't know what's real anymore. You hear some stuff and you're like, is this real? Is this
yeah.
what's going on? Like it's and I like to
Right.
keep it. That's it.
And it's also dangerous, if other people start acting that way, especially towards guys like MMA fighters, who are trained fighters, it's not going to go very well for them. If they suddenly feel that they can just challenge them. So Charles, the last time we spoke, I asked you about your goals, right? We were talking about, how important is it for you to fight for a world title? Now here you are about to fight for a world title. What are your goals? Say, let's say everything goes well on May 3rd. What are you looking to accomplish this year from the MMA perspective?
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to go and win this world championship. May 3rd, I'm a world champion. I'm on a 3-fight win streak with all finishes, and I'm in a great spot. And that's my goal, and that's what I want to do. So yeah, and once I'm in that spot, I mean, I've talked to Dana, I've talked to the UFC. They said that they would take me back if that's what they want, but I'm not even sure that I want that. I had fights left on my UFC contract, and I decided not to fight them out because they weren't fighting me as often as I wanted. Like, I have a feeling that if I stayed in my UFC contract and didn't get a release that they granted me, that I might not even have fought. I fought in 3 fights and gotten 3 wins since then, and got some good sponsors, had some
Yeah,
good videos of me finishing guys. Like, I've been happy, I'm like training, you're doing what I love to do, rather than sometimes the UFC, they make you sit in the shelf and they make you wait, and then they call you on 3 days notice, say, hey, you want to fight on 3 days notice? And you're like,
exactly.
what are you talking about? Like, why? Like, well, this is the fight we offered you, either take it or leave it, or we're not going to offer you another one. And that gets very discouraging. Like, mentally, it's not good
Yeah,
for. And I'm at the point now where, yeah, I love making money and fighting. And like, obviously that's the goal. Everyone needs to make money to live the life they want to. But in the same breath, like, mental health is number one. And if I'm training, fighting, doing what I love, and staying active, that's what I love to do, then I'm happy. But if I'm sitting on the shelf, not knowing when my next bout is, and not knowing if they're going to call me in 2 days and ask me to fight, every meal I eat, I'm like, oh, should I eat this or should I not eat this?
right.
Should I order this or should I order that? Like, and I'm in another country. Like they called me once in Italy. Like, this was a long time ago. I was in Italy. I sat down at like literally the best pizza place in the planet. Like, it was rated like the sit down and get my pizza. Gets in front of me. I look at my text real quick, and my manager's like, "Hey, you want to fight BJ Penn in 10 days?" I'm like, "Yeah." Tied my shoes. Didn't even eat the pizza. Ran around Italy, cut and wait for 2 days, and for them to tell me that he didn't accept the fight, and they fight someone else. And I'm like, dude, like, stuff like that. It just kind of
Yeah,
it's not good for anybody. And I'm in a spot now where, on the A side, I get to, call the shots. I get to be able to, be the main event. Everybody is coming to see me. And it's like, it feels good. It's a good feeling knowing that
yeah,
you're going to be, putting on a show, and, you're the main event, and you're fighting for a world title,
yeah,
and something like this. That's it. So I'm doing what I love.
yeah,
That's putting on a show.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like there's nothing less fair to fighters than when they get short notice assignments, right? I know sometimes it's to save a show and there's nothing we can
I've
do
done
about
it.
it,
I mean,
but yeah, I know you've done it a few times, right?
many times, yeah. I fought a fight on my first
Yeah,
UFC fight was 5 days notice against the number 8 guy in the world. He fought Connor right after me. It was fight of the night. Fought him in Stockholm, Sweden. So
yeah,
and I had to travel for 2 days. Another one, I fought TJ Brown on 3 days notice. I had to cut like 25 pounds in 3 days, fly to Las Vegas. Like, I mean, and I lost that fight. A fight I never feel like I ever would have lost against that kid. I could fight that kid if I had even just a week to train for him. I think it would have went a lot differently. It's just 3 days when someone's been in camp for 8 weeks. Even if you're a better fighter than them, you're in a tough spot. Like, this is the highest
exactly,
level. It's
exactly.
like it's like football. Like, if you put the best football team, they can't just, the Patriots or the Kansas City Chiefs, and you put them against the New York Jets, who aren't that good, and you're like, okay, but you guys have 2 weeks to prepare for this, and you can game plan. And you guys have 3 days. You just come, it's like
Yeah,
that's the strategy matters. So
yeah,
it's timing, and sharpening the blade, and repetition and practice. But when they take that away from you, it turns you into the B side, and there's an A side and the B side. And when you're the B side, you're not meant to, it makes things more difficult. It's not like you can't win. Like I said, even being fighting Mexico City versus Yair Rodriguez, like, they didn't put me there in Mexico to necessarily beat him. Like, I went and I whooped him in front of his whole country, in front of his home crowd. And then the judges say, okay, it's 2-1, you lose split decision. I'm like, man, that's tough. If that was anywhere else, especially Boston, I would have won. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I like
yeah,
fighting.
yeah,
At least keeps things fair.
yeah. And that's the other thing I was thinking about is, you talked about wanting to fight at the Boston Garden again. You're undefeated in Boston.
Yep.
Um, winning this world title does get you a step closer to something like that, right? So is that something that you still have your sights set on?
Yeah, always. I mean, like I said, I have the most all-time wins in the Boston Garden, above Conor McGregor and Rob Font. I think he has the second most, and that's something I'm proud of. Like, I mean, my nickname is Boston Strong. I grew up there since I was a little kid, went to Peabody High School,
Yeah.
and I pride myself. My parents still live there, and I live in South Florida now to train and to focus on my life and my career. But that's my roots. That's who raised me, and that's who made me the fighter I am. Like, as far as like my fighter's heart, like that's why I'm able to have 4 fight of the night bonuses in the UFC, and I've been able to push through some of the toughest fights and put on these amazing fights. But yeah, I definitely take a lot of pride in that, and I love it. I can see myself, selling out the Boston Garden one day, whether it's in whatever the type of matches, and there's these new promotions, there's so much stuff going on. If the UFC
Yeah.
or if PFL or if Bellator or if CES gets big enough where they can sell out the Boston Garden, like, man, I'm the guy, and everybody knows that. Like, I
Absolutely.
was just,
Absolutely.
yeah, I was just on the show. My one of my best friends growing up, Rico DeShulo, was just on the Ultimate Fighter show with Conor McGregor on Team Conor McGregor, and I met Conor, man. He loves Boston. He's like, fucking Boston strong. He's yelling it after Rico knocked the dude out, and like, I mean, everybody knows that's what I represent, and if they ever come back to the Garden, I'll be there. So
Yeah. No, that sounds great, man. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit also about your, kind of the future of MMA and your brother continuing the Rosa legacy. What's he up to? What are your thoughts about him? Are you thinking that he's going to go pro soon? What are the plans there?
yeah, man, he has the blueprint, and that's what we talked about when we started this interview. I mean, he has the blueprint. He took exactly what
Hmm.
I took, what my coach did. My coach fought in the UFC. I fought in the UFC, and now we're taking it. My coach had 4 fights in the UFC. I had 15. We're taking this blueprint. We're passing it on to my brother, who hopefully will have 50 fights in the UFC, and he'll be a world champion. And that's the goal. I mean, he's the #1 amateur fighter in the country. He's making his pro debut May 10th in Orlando for Lelio Code for a big show, and he has a big fight, his first pro fight coming up, and we're gonna fast track him to the UFC. And I think that obviously there's a little bit of luck involved with staying healthy and injuries and stuff, but man, if he can stay grinding, and stay healthy and stay focused, which he is, he's one of the most focused, hardworking kids I ever met. I think he can go all the
Yeah.
way. He can further than me. I think he could win the UFC championship belt, and that's the
Yeah.
goal. He's right there, man. The kid's an absolute monster. He's trained seriously. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't, even drink energy drinks. He doesn't drink coffee, dude. The kid's a straight hard worker, and he shows up every day. And that's sometimes what it takes. And I think he's in a good spot.
Yeah, for sure. Would you want him to fight on your undercard one day, and where you guys are fighting the same day, or
Yeah,
would that be distracting
no,
to
for
you?
sure. We almost did it in the last one, but some of the opponents pulled out and stuff. But I started thinking about it. I think it's definitely something awesome and a goal. But when I think about it, I think
Yeah.
of how much I care for him and how stressful it can be. Like, when I'm just at his fights in general, without me fighting, I'm super, like, man, I'm more stressed out for my own fight. But I couldn't imagine having a fight after watching him fight. I think I thought about that my coach said it, actually. My coach, Charles McCarthy, was like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, think of how much, like, these fights are stressful enough, Charles. We're gonna make them more stressful, and now I have to worry about both of you
Kind of
fighting.
training.
It's just not something I'm opposed to
Yeah.
if you think about it like in a different view. But if it's something like the Boston Garden, and we can sell out 20,000,
Exactly.
and it's me and him in the main event and co-main event, like, then money talks. I'm in for it.
Yeah, yeah. Or I was thinking, what might work out well is, maybe early in his career, if he's deep in the undercard, so you have a chance to sort of refocus.
Yeah.
That might be good where you're in the main event, right? Something like
It's
that.
awesome. We just sell a ton of more tickets. I mean, he has his own
Yeah.
fan base. We went to, Wheaton College up there. So he's a whole, 10 years younger than me, a whole nother generation of people and fans,
Different
and
generation, right?
it's different. So, we got both generations
Yeah,
coming together. That's gonna make for a mega show.
definitely, definitely. And how about the rest of the gym where you're at these days? Anybody else that we should look out for?
Yeah, definitely. My roommate from Peru, Daniel Sancora Marcos from Peru, he's 16-0. 3-0 in the UFC. I think, 1 or 2 more fights he'll be fighting. If O'Malley's still champion, he'll be fighting for the world title. So, look out for Daniel Marcos. I mean, I took him in before he was in the UFC. His manager pretty much dropped him off my house and was like, "Hey, can you help train this guy? Can you mentor him? Can you coach him? His goal is to be UFC champion, and we can't think of anybody better than to have him live with and to look up to and follow than you. We think you got what it takes because we know what you've been doing with your brother. We know how focused and dedicated you are, and we want him to see how a UFC fighter lives. Like, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to get around America. He didn't even speak English. Now the kid's speaking English. He's doing
Wow.
interviews in English. He knows how to cook. He knows how to go to the grocery store and
I was
go
gonna ask
shopping.
you.
He has his own car. He's driving
Yeah.
around. He's I train with him every single day, and he's freaking gets better every single day. And it's his level is like he's one of the best fighters on the planet Earth right now. I think he's top 15 in the bantamweight division in the UFC right now, and he's undefeated. He's one of the only undefeated, maybe one of the only 5 undefeated fighters in the UFC right now, and he's special and he's gifted. So definitely look
Amazing.
out for him. And of course, my
For
brother
sure.
Luke, King of Monsters Rosa, top amateur fighter in the country, making his pro debut May 10th. So definitely follow him, man. These are the two guys that I've helped, and I also got another another guy, Dustin Scrappy Lampros. He's 9-0. He was just on the last season of The Ultimate Fighter too. And he's waiting for a shot in the UFC, and that's a tough thing. I watch him every day. The kid's been dieting for a year straight, waiting for the UFC to call him, and they haven't yet. And it's like he thinks every day the calls coming in. It's tough. It's tough to watch. I'm like, man, this kid's more dedicated than anyone I've ever seen, and he needs his shot. But eventually, it's just like he keeps fighting and winning. But I mean, eventually there'll be a point where he can't be denied. But it's
Yeah.
he's also the one that's on the radar.
Yeah, for sure. We'll look out for those guys. Well, Charles, thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Any final words to your fans who are going to come either to Foxwoods and watch you on May 3rd, fighting for your first world title, the vacant CES MMA lightweight title against Josh Hook on Harvey, or maybe guys, people who will be watching that from home?
No, for sure, man. I mean, I really, I definitely want to thank all my sponsors. Like, it helps a lot. Now, fighting outside the UFC, like being able to get these sponsors on board, like these guys have helped me so much. So I just, want to thank all my sponsors that have, chipped in for this and helped me. You guys will see them on my banner. So everybody come through May 3rd, Foxwoods main event, CES. Come watch me win my first world title and become the CES MMA world champion. And it's definitely a fight you don't want to miss. Bring your friends and family and be there, guys. Don't miss it.
Looking forward to it, Charles. Best of luck.
Thank you, brother.